you will be surprised at how crazy fast and accurate it is. So you can now do more in your job. You can become more aware of what's happening in the market. You can become more aware of what your competitors are talking about. You can become more aware about your competitor strategy in literally minutes that would take you hours and hours and hours to do. You just wouldn't do it because everything comes down to ROI. What's the return on the impact? Well, the impact or the effort is like hours of your life. And that's hard. We might get more lives, but we definitely get this one. So your time is really valuable. But if you can change the equation of return on effort or return on impact, where maybe the return is the same, but your effort is now seconds of your life or minutes of your life, it really flips the dynamic of a lot of ROI equation of time management in your life.
Yeah, and to go back to the OCR analogy that you said earlier, and some finance teams just know it as AP automation, right? You know, I can grab a PDF invoice and it will automatically read it and key the transaction for me so I don't have to do it manually. I think it's optical character recognition is the acronym or something like that.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah. That's not new. Which is why we're saying that AI takes it to the next level. But what used to happen is in the early stages of OCR, we're talking years ago now, a human would still have to train the OCR platform to know what to look for. And they really struggled if you had fields in different places on the invoice, because you'd then have the OCR come back and say, oh, the data is not in the expected place on that invoice. So instead of the date being on the top right, it was on the top left. So every time you had an outlier, somebody had to go in and say, oh, no, you've missed it. It's here in the top left. And one example of the way that those sorts of systems are getting more advanced with the advent of more advanced AIs is it can look for the key terms as opposed to knowing the structure of the document. So it doesn't need to know where the date is. It just knows that it's looking for a date field that looks a little bit like this, right? But what you're now saying is we can take that to the next level where you've also then got a string of associated activities off the back of that. You know, it's not just taking an invoice and categorizing it and putting all of the fields in the right place just to produce an invoice. It's then triggering a set of actions to say, right, well, this is an asset because it's a physical thing. This now needs to go into this part of our ledger, and then we need to trigger a depreciation or whatever the term is for that exercise afterwards. So it's interesting to see that evolution. Going back to my point earlier about machine learning and that outlier detection not being new technology, what we're seeing now is an evolution to speed up that process. And then to come back to your point earlier is traditionally these sorts of corrections and categorizations would come as part of your month-end close. You know, so I need to go through all of my transactions and determine what hasn't got the correct data, right? So anytime you can shave off that, is moving more towards that continuous close type process that we want to get towards. Some people still don't believe in the concept of a continuous close, which I kind of get because as part of month end, you still might be waiting on information from another department, right? You know, and you could have an AI bot prompt them forever and a day to say, you're going to send this through yet? You're going to send this through yet? So people will then become the limitation instead of the platform, right?
Yeah. And I think it's not every business has the same needs. If you're a big, private, slow-growing company, like your business might not be changing. It might not matter, really. If you're a small business and you're just a sole owner, you're like making enough and you don't really care. You're not trying to grow bigger, better, get more profitable. Again, you might not care. But some businesses are growing quickly, or they need to shrink quickly, or their business is changing and the market's changing. And they want to have a sense of like your health. The financial health of their business, because it means a lot. You have a lot of employees, you have a board, you have shareholders, you have partners. And this is really what it's geared towards. I think back in the day, if you wanted to, we could be out at like dinner together and you wanted to pay me back for your half, and you'd like write me a check, and then I would take the check and I would like go to the bank and I would wait in line, and then I would wait for a bank teller and fill out a form, and then they would take that check and they would hand me the cash and it would come. That could take hours of time. Now I could just say, oh, here, I owe you money, done. And it's done through Venmo or Revolut or whatever your sort of Cash App, whatever that sort of thing is. That's like not a great use of people's time. Like we already know what we want to accomplish. Bank statements are the same thing. So if you're a modern bank, use a modern bank like Mercury here in the United States, they built a statements API. So we can automate with like 99.99% accuracy or whatever, because we know your opening balance, your closing balance. We know every daily balance. We know all the money in, we know all the money out. And so we can reconcile that to the system, to the general ledger, And like, you don't have to do that work anymore. So the alternative is you're manually split screening your statement to like some segment and you're doing all this process. Now OCR can like pull out, you could Google Bard for like a couple pennies if you're willing to share it and you want to share it and you permission it, can parse this out with like, I think about 95% accuracy, can pull out your opening balance, your closing balance, total money out. We can save a bunch of time. A bot can go browser scrape and automate this entire process if the bank doesn't want to build an open banking platform that shares the statement balances around the way. You could still do that manually if you want to. Our system doesn't preclude you from manually doing it and manually going on the system. But like, if you don't want to, then like, you don't have to go do it manually. But we can make this happen in seconds
Mm,
instead of in minutes or hours or days. And if you have like 4 or 5 bank accounts, different, like these things just, that's not a good use of time. If you know the exact weight of how many puzzle pieces are in that 1,000-piece puzzle, for whatever reason, I guess the equivalent is like, you could just put it on the scale and know, okay, all the pieces are here. So you don't have to go through and spend days and weeks with your grandmother putting out this puzzle only to miss those last missing pieces and be super frustrated. Like, we can use technology in ways that are not great uses of time that help us get to the parts that are challenging and interesting and drive a lot of satisfaction. I don't think people study accounting to like do all of this stuff manually. That's not a lot of satisfaction. People might do it or they might like it every once in a while, but they shouldn't have to do it all the time. And that's taking away what we kept hearing again and again. It takes me 25 days to get through a company, and I have 6 days if I'm lucky to do any of their interesting stuff that people are asking me for. People are frustrated all the time. If we could reduce that down to 90 minutes or
mm,
something, then like we can spend the whole month trying to go through budget versus actuals and planning and scenario analysis, different views. That's the part where you get paid more money, you have more job satisfaction, your colleagues like you more, and you're more appreciated. Accountants should have a seat at the table, and
mm.
they don't, at least as much anymore as they did before, because they're relegated to like a future compliance tool. And they're the gatekeeper of the insights and the analysis. That's terrible. They should be the person saying, I have confidence. Let's go figure out what to do about this.
Mm. And to your point there about spending time gleaning those insights, seen a couple of posts recently on LinkedIn that say stuff like the future of finance is data science. I don't know whether you've seen much of this. Now, what I'm not saying is that finance needs to retrain as data scientists. That's not what I'm saying at all. But hopefully, it gets to the point where we can spend time surfacing more interesting insights from our data, right? And I think that's where the data science piece comes from. Because I think coming back to, I guess, predictive analytics and the AI piece when it comes to all of that modeling and scenario planning and that sort of stuff, if you know a couple of different ways to forecast and do those predictions, maybe because you've done a little bit of learning on Python and you know the algorithms to use and all of that sort of stuff, that's potentially a better use of time than, as you say, keying stuff in or categorizing stuff. So I don't know whether you've heard the data science analogy or whether you think that's where we're heading or not, but it's an interesting thought experiment.
I mean, absolutely. I think that was one of my naive insights when I came in. I came from a
Mhm.
modeling background.
Yeah.
My background's in math, and I built models and predictive models. And you spend so much time structuring the core underlying data, that takes up, 80% of your time. 10% is actually building models, and 10% is explaining the models to everybody else and what they mean and what they should do about it. But you're spending the overwhelming part of your time having confidence the data is right, because again, garbage in, garbage out. So I came at it from a math perspective of and the equivalent, I think, is like accounting is the data quality, and finance is the model, the insights that come out of that. And so it's, not a surprise that as accounting, like sort of your traditional summary P&L and balance sheet are becoming less and less sufficient in understanding business health in a modern business that's global or software, have sort of relationship based revenue, that now over 50% of finance leaders don't come from an accounting background.
Mm.
And accounting you still have to do for compliance and fiduciary responsibility purposes, but it's becoming more and more relegated to like a data science part in which they're not super qualified, or a compliance role, which is very important, but less satisfying,
Mm.
because it's just the same thing 1 month and 1 month and 1 month, and then very scrutinous when you're getting an audit at the end of the year, or if you get an IRS or whatever your regulator sort of letter, like it's becoming less and less fun. And that's because of software, I think. And so we're taking it as, if we change the underlying core data model, can you spend more time doing the more valuable strategic and insights work?
Mm.
And I think that is important. The accounts are the experts in financial health and measuring financial health, and finance is sort of helping increase that shareholder value at its most simplest form. Um, and finance can't do their job if they don't have really great accounting. And accounting gets relegated more and more to kind of messy data work. They're the superpowers. And so I think we need to fix this and have the whole organization understand accounting a little bit more. And we can do that with design and I think with AI.
Mm. And go back to the point that you mentioned there about your background being in mathematics. So, and as I always say, I've had a couple of questions recently on, what are the low hanging fruits with AI for a non-technical person? And what I always say is, I'm not technical either. I just get stuck in. That's how I learn. Right? But one thing that I come up against, and follow Christian Martinez, who's finance automation manager at Kraft Heinz, is doing some really good work, because he's all about the data. He's all about that analysis. He's all about that, statistical data that then forms predictions and all that sort of stuff. So the finance pros that maybe have the tools now and are able to take their data and maybe start doing some predictions, do you have any recommendations on where people can go and learn about some of the available models? I know that obviously Python will run various algorithms on your behalf, but you need to know what to run before you can ask it the question. So do you have any recommendations on just sort of base level learning on that sort of predictive algorithm stuff?
Yeah, I think, I mean, all the appropriate caveats about data privacy and don't like
Mm,
share
mm,
data that you're not like allowed to do.
yeah.
It's actually like pretty easy to get started. Like,
Mm,
go to OpenAI
mm,
and create an account for free,
mm,
and you can use an old version for free of ChatGPT and
mm,
just start writing prompts in there. Writing prompts, just like ask it questions about
mm,
life, about stories, generate a story. Um, Go to Midjourney or the Dolly and just start playing around with image creation. Like,
mm,
start simple. It doesn't even have to be about your business. Whatever your passion is, write a song,
mm,
create a children's story, write a review for one of your employees. Just start getting familiar with it. It's free. There's no consequence. You can do it from the privacy of your own home and your phone along the way. Okay. As you start then getting comfortable with just changing a couple words and some prompts and seeing how different the results can be, it's just like talking to a human and making sure they understand it. It's pretty good. If you really want to get crazy, you can go to a paid version, still pretty cheap, and you can see even more capabilities, and you can see the differences between, 3, 3.5, and 4, for example.
mm,
Then start going to playing around with specialized software. So if you're like in marketing, you can go use one of like the marketing automation. And if you're in finance, play around with some of the more AI tools. Maybe just use it on for your own personal finance. Go
mm,
find a personal finance tool. Go play around with like upload a document.
mm,
Take a picture of your bill at home, just like your electricity bill or your phone bill. Take a picture with your phone, upload it to ChatGPT, and see what it comes back with. I think
mm,
you'll be amazed at how fast and simple in seconds things can do. Then if you get really creative, start tying it together. Take a picture of a bill and try and connect it into your like payment system and pay
mm,
your phone bill or something. Just
mm.
play around with it. It doesn't, there's really no harm to play around with it. You'll start to explore and see the capabilities. I think that the typical sentence, which I'll repeat, and I didn't make this up, but I think it's great, is you're not going to lose your job to AI, but you're going to lose your job to the person who is doing your job with AI.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, it's valid, very valid. And then I guess coming back to that statistical analysis, the next level could be if you've got a dummy spreadsheet with a bit of data in it, again, anonymized if it's company data. You could say something like, from the data in this model or whatever the spreadsheet looked like, what are your recommended statistical models or forecast mechanisms for being able to glean more insight from this data? And it might come back with like regression analysis or something like that. So we can almost shortcut that learning process to say, right, well, you're trained on a load of data that I can't fit in my head. So what are your recommendations?
Yeah, go to a spread, just make up a spreadsheet, create like a spreadsheet, anonymize something, and just start asking AI about it. Like,
Mm,
what do you learn? You can upload take your favorite public company and
yep,
upload the earnings report and
mhm,
just say, tell me about this company. Like,
mm,
what changed? What do they do? Ask questions just like you would in your job as a financial analyst, going around. So, all of these things that would take a long time, you should see what all of your competitors are doing, your public competitors are doing. You should know and understand every quarterly report, they're making announcements. You could read some press story, but that's probably not going to give you the level of detail you want.
mm,
It would take you, how long does it take you to read the 150-page, like 10K report, like quarterly earnings report or the annual report? Just ask ChatGPT to like tell you summaries of the stuff that you care about. What's the comp analysis? What are the multiple analysis? The stuff you know about. You will be surprised at how crazy fast and accurate it is. So you can now do more in your job. You can become more aware of what's happening in the market. You can be more aware of what your competitors are talking about. You can become more aware about your competitor strategy in literally minutes that would take you hours and hours and hours to do. You just wouldn't do it because everything comes down to ROI. What's the
mm,
return on the impact? Well, the impact or the effort is like hours of your life. And that's hard. We might get more lives, but we definitely get this one. So your time is really valuable. But if you can change the equation of return on effort or return on impact, where maybe the return is the same, but your effort is now seconds of your life or minutes of your life, it really flips the dynamic of a lot of ROI equation
mm,
of time management in your life.
mm,
So take advantage, don't delay. It's free. Like block off an afternoon and just
mm,
play with it. As
mm,
soon as you do, you'll do it more and more and more. The fear that just like entrepreneurship, the first step is the hardest.
mm.
Open it up. You're listening. Open up a browser right now. Go to OpenAI and type in a prompt right now.
Yeah.
Just do it. It's so approachable and easy.
Quick one, guys. I'd like to take a moment to invite you to the AI Finance Club. The AI Finance Club isn't just another professional group, it's a dedicated platform to help finance pros integrate AI into their work. Now, with AI revolutionizing every aspect of business, staying up to date and building AI skills is no longer an option if you don't want to get left behind. So, with a membership, every month you'll receive a live workshop with industry experts, including me, to help you apply AI in practical finance scenarios. You'll get an in-depth review of the latest AI tools tailored for finance so you know what works best. You'll get customized AI prompts to help transform the way that you work, curated news and updates on AI advancements in the finance sector, and deep dives into AI in finance processes to help optimize your finance operations. Now, personally, I do believe that a hive mind approach to learning works wonders. So on top of what I've already mentioned, you will have access to a community chat where you can connect, share, and learn from a network of finance professionals who are all embracing AI together. Now, as a Tech for Finance listener, you'll receive 10% off your first annual subscription. Plus, you'll receive free access to the entire ChatGPT for Finance course, both the videos and written guides. Now, to take advantage of this offer, go to tech4finance.com/AI and enter the code ADAM100 at checkout. Once again, that's tech4finance.com/AI with the code ADAM100 at checkout. See you there. And you mentioned Google Bard earlier. Have you experimented with Bard yourself? I
Yeah.
have. I'm not Bard's greatest fan. I often say that in using ChatGPT, especially the pro version, I've kind of seen the light. And when I go back to Bard, I sometimes feel disappointed. And even though they say, oh, it's got Gemini in it now, even though it still appears as Palm 2 in the prompts. So I can't work out whether I'm using Gemini Pro or whatever. I don't know whether you dabbled at all.
I think one of the advantages, these things are evolving so quickly.
Mm,
I wouldn't be surprised by the time this podcast started and it ended, like everybody's come out with the next version of their AI models and the capabilities are crazy. Um, I think it sort of depends on the strengths and capabilities of what you're doing. From a large language model perspective, I'm not an expert. I haven't tested all of them, but I'm a fan of OpenAI and I think they're evolving quite quickly. When you want to do more factual data retrieval stuff on the internet,
mhm,
Google is just going to be better. So, for
mm,
example, in our AI, we have an AI lookup tool and we have an AI categorizer tool.
mhm,
The AI lookup tool, BART, is much better because if it's some like random restaurant in some random city where there was some random conference, like OpenAI isn't going to know what that is. But Google will like blend in the internet alongside that. And that comes in slightly more handy. Matching and plotting the charts of accounts, I think OpenAI is slightly better. For document parsing, generally, I think OpenAI is really good. If you're doing specific bank statement stuff, like Bard is pretty good because they're training specifically on that stuff. And there's more Anthropic and Llama, and there's a lot more. So I don't have time to play around with all of them, but I think the important part is get started and just sort of see. But it, like almost everything, it depends on the use case. Just like software languages, different use cases are better for some are better for high velocity data sharing, and some are better for stability, and some are better for high velocity changes on the front end or the back end or systems. Like the different languages are better for different things.
Mhm. But the key is to experiment, because you can get free accounts for all of these. So obviously Bard, part of your Google account, OpenAI, just log in there. You mentioned Anthropic. So that's Claude 2. Again, you can get that for free. My first experience with Claude was with document recognition, because they were some of the first to be able to upload a PDF and ask questions on it. That was pretty good. But then you can experiment some of the others. Go to Hugging Chat, which is produced by Hugging Face, who have been an open source platform for quite a while. And then you can switch your model. So you can use Meta's Llama model there. You can use some of the others. But I
Awesome.
find as well that as well as obviously the use case example of some large language models are better for different things, as you said there, I often find as well that personal preference also counts as well. And to draw, I guess, a human comparison, obviously there's some humans that you get on with better than others, right? And there's some humans that will give you an answer that you prefer over another human, for example. And it's the same with large language models, right? Because they're all trained on different data sets. So personally, you've got to get used to the AIs that you prefer chatting with as well. And the only way you're going to find that is to experiment and have a go with all of them, I guess.
Yeah, it's good. It's good to experiment. Using only one feels limiting, and it depends on the use cases. And so you wouldn't just use one software language when building a web app. You probably wouldn't use one AI model when building an AI capability. You got to start somewhere, just because resources are always limited. And similar to a soccer team or
Yeah.
football team, as you guys call it, like you need a bunch of different people with a bunch of different skills to create a winning team. Yeah,
Yeah,
you want both. All.
absolutely. And how are you doing for time, by the way? I appreciate we're coming up to an hour.
Yeah, let's go.
Yeah. Okay. So let's go a little bit into, I guess, predictive mode. Even though it's always difficult because the rate of change is so mad, right? But I'll use an example, right? So you probably know of Glean AI. Howard, and I think I know of him through Balta as well. The AP platform. You familiar with Glean?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I listened to a recent podcast. He was on the MAD podcast, which was machine learning and data or something like that. Again, it's another PE firm. There's a lot in the data analytics space. But he was talking, and it might be associated to metadata, but when they go through their AP process, they look at the vendor and they're able to give insights on whether they're overpaying or not. As to how long they can do that for, I don't know, until the suppliers get a bit annoyed that they're telling everybody whether they're over or underpaying or not. But that's aside the point. The point is, we're getting to a point now where we've got massive amounts of shared data across the internet that we can start feeding into these tools, right? And another example I've heard of is the concept of an intelligent GL, whereby if you're on a software platform that's also the home of other companies, even though the data is anonymized, you could, in theory, start learning more about the best way to structure your GL based on similar companies in the industry, even though you don't know who the companies are, right? So do we think that's the way that things are moving? Are we going to get more insight, and are we going to be able to work quicker by having access to this shared data, whereby the systems are telling us what best practice is, as opposed to us having to work it out for ourselves?
So everything, yeah, I mean, yes, absolutely. One of the things that will be exciting is bringing down the cost of work to get to the end state of the decision. One of the other things that will help with is the accuracy of data from like a document, from a bill or an invoice to
Mhm.
a system. Um, and things like benchmarking will
Mm,
become slightly easier because you can do lookalike models, which are very familiar, very, very popular in, say, like advertising,
mm,
et cetera. And so if we could do kind of lookalike in accounting and finance, it drives down the cost of the effort to do that and to renegotiate it, and to understand if you're overpaying or underpaying. Again, trying to always figure out, am I able to drive the best return on investment or effort that I can across the business? You always have to be skeptical
mm,
with anything that's giving a recommendation,
right.
whether it is a person, a piece of software, or AI, about what are their motivations. Because just because it's AI doesn't mean it's a truly unbiased AI and it's going to give
Mm,
you the best information. So I think with everything is you always be skeptical of everything. But if it's nudging you in a direction, uh, it's probably worth looking, especially if it can save you money. And pricing, just personally, is I think one of the worst trends that are becoming less and less customer friendly across the way. And I literally just last night was like looking at some startup and I was like, oh, this seems pretty cool. Like we should use them. No, not even a pricing page on the website. Like not even like a pretend pricing page. I see a lot of pretend pricing pages where it says pricing, but you actually don't see any numbers on the pricing page. It's a bunch of words. And it's like, oh, book a demo. And you're like, and I just like abandoned. So I hope the trend went from like transparent pricing to like talk with a salesperson to talk with another salesperson to like give a bunch of information to give you some obscure quote. Like, can we just go back to transparent pricing again? I'm excited for people to get frustrated with the lack of simplicity and people just to show pricing on a web page. And so you could sign up, you know what you're paying for, and you just go.
yeah. No, very, very good. And yeah, I mean, it'd be interesting to see the way that things evolve, but just to echo your point there about trust, and I think this is maybe going to be a fundamental theme for 2024, is with more information comes the requirement for a stricter or more precise filter, shall we say, because there's more AI generated content, so you're probably going to get double the amount of cold emails from AI generated content and all that sort of stuff.
I
So
already do. Like an hour of my day of just deleting, 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 deleting.
yeah, yeah,
It's ridiculous.
absolutely. And you tell it mine off, right? So my LinkedIn profile is deliberately not optimized for a how do I use the right words here? But the company that I work for at the moment isn't actually one company; it's a combination. So I've got Think and Tech for Finance, so day job and passion project.
Yeah.
Um, and I can always tell the AI automated ones because they say, "Oh, massive fan of the work at Think Plus Tech for Finance," which isn't a company; it doesn't
Yeah. Yeah.
exist. They spent 30 seconds looking at my profile; they'd understand that straight away. So yeah, my filter for that sort of stuff is very high. But if I were to give some tips on how people spot AI generated content, it's the same with LinkedIn comments. Is it just regurgitates publicly available information, right? So if I can always spot an AI comment on my post because it won't say anything new. It will just summarize what I've posted just in a slightly different way in a paragraph. The same with cold email, the same with all of the other content is it lacks that uniqueness and that extra level of thoroughness. So from a cold email perspective, as a person, if they've managed to pick up on something that's very difficult for an AI to pick up on, so a
Yeah.
specific post or a press release or a news announcement or something like that. And again, AI can pick up on some of this, but yeah. So coming back to the point, I think we need a higher filter. So if we are presented with more information, we then need a way to distill that information. So are we then using an AI to distill AI? Anyway, we can go down the rabbit hole, and maybe that's a little bit too meta. But no, I think you're right. I think we just need to trust to a certain extent, but still bear in mind that we are expert humans, need to do the editing and need to do the course correcting and all of that sort of stuff, because otherwise, it'll end up as a bit of a mess, right?
Yeah. Life. I mean, unless we're in a simulation, which I'm actually growing more and more convinced of,
Yeah. Me too.
then, like, if it's an inevitability, then it's probably true, and we're probably in it right now. But it's a good AI because I believe I have free will, subject to the laws and constraints of my government. But I believe it, so it's gonna get powerful along the way. But yeah, I think trust is going to become harder and harder as we can simulate people's voices, as it gets trained and it gets better, as video imagery, as content, and so it's gonna be harder. But at the end of the day, your business has a certain amount of cash in your bank account, or it doesn't, and you can't pay somebody on AI. You can only pay somebody with cash, maybe Bitcoin. So there's still jobs to be done for accounting and finance people in companies, along the way.
Yeah, very good. Very good. So, that's probably a good place to end, but I'll ask you the question that I ask all of my guests, or as many of my guests as I can. So podcast is called Tech for Finance. We've talked about a couple already. So we've talked about Puzzle, OpenAI, all of that sort of stuff. But thinking maybe about some of the more obscure apps or softwares that you use on a day-to-day basis, is there a phone app or a browser plugin or anything like that that you use either in your business or in your personal life that you couldn't live without? What's your go-to app?
Oh, wait. What is this? There's a new one. This is You're probably gonna hate it because this has nothing to do with uh can of soup. This is one of the most fun implementations of AI in the world. It has nothing with accounting and finance. Sorry for going to it. Can of soup. It's basically an AI Instagram, and you take a face shot and then you have to prompt it. So all the pictures are completely fake. What do I look like as the Queen of England? What would I look like if I was a cartoon flying off the wall? And so it's sort of like a Mid-Journey meets Instagram, something else. It is so fun. Don't download it. You will never look at your phone again. But that is, to me, the most fun implementation of AI of the week.
Can of soup. I
Can
think it's
of
on the
soup.
App Store. Yeah,
Yeah.
Admittance Inc. Um, give it a go. I'll put it in the show note, but it doesn't matter that it's not
Canofsoup.com.
canofsoup.com. Yeah, and I don't care that it's not Tech for Finance. It's the point of the conversation, right? We had Tamer Abdal, who's CEO of Causal, on the podcast not too long
Yeah.
ago. And I also said in the question that I asked, is there like a gadget? So it could be like an app, a piece of software, or a gadget that you can live without. And for him, it's he's got Philips One Blade, which is a razor. And he said, I couldn't live without. He said it's by far the easiest shaver I've ever used in my life. I was like, that's fine. Like, it's something we have not had mentioned before.
This
Previously.
isn't bad either.
No, no.
The Ember cup, like keep your coffee warm
Yeah, yeah,
along the
yeah.
way, so
Yeah, yeah.
it doesn't cool off because it's heated. That's another good one.
No, amazing. Get it on Amazon. No, amazing. No, yeah. There we go. For people that aren't on video, Sasha's holding up his Ember cup here. So no, all good. So, but no, I've kept you potentially longer than I should have done, Sasha. So do you want to tell people where they can find out more about you, find out more about Puzzle?
Yeah, Puzzle for inspiration, if you're not in the US, is puzzle.io, and if you are in the US, puzzle.io. It's the same URL, but it's a really great version. So free 30-day trial, so you can get it and check it out. It doesn't cost anything. And I only ask is that if you have ideas of how we can make it better, let us know. We just raised a bunch of money. We have product people and engineers that just want to make the best accounting software out there, and we love unfiltered feedback. But you can find me on LinkedIn, on Twitter or X, whatever we call it these days, or just Sasha at puzzle.io.
Very good. And you've got an open invitation from Sasha to DM him all of the pictures that you've generated on Can of Soup, right?
Oh, please bring it on.
No, amazing. I'll be doing that later today. All right, Sasha. No, that's perfect. Thanks ever so much for coming on. It's been amazing.
Thanks for having me.
No worries, Sasha. See you later.